This is the Bates Bobcast, our weekly podcast where we take a look at the week that was in Bates athletics. My name is Aaron Morse, and for the summer months on the Bobcast, we are taking a trip down memory lane with student athletes and coaches from the past. This week, we catch up with Rob Thompson, the Bates men's soccer team's first All-American from the class of 1966. That's coming up on the Bates Bobcast. Rob Thompson starred on the soccer pitch for Bates in the program's first 4 seasons as a varsity sport. Starting in 1962, the Bobcats went 24-10-7 during Thompson's collegiate career. And in 1965, he became the first All-American in team history. The big fullback stood 6'4" and anchored the Bobcat defense. He also starred on the tennis court for 2 years, playing doubles with James "Stu" Wallach, and helping Bates achieve a 10-1 record in 1963. Thompson's soccer prowess was such that he even got recruited to kick for the football team. In 1965, he made a field goal and played a soccer match against Bowdoin on the same day. And today, Rob Thompson joins the Bobcast.
Rob, first of all, take us back when you were growing up. When did you first get into playing the sport of soccer? Because that was, you also played tennis and football at Bates, but soccer was kind of your primary sport. When did that first get going for you?
Well, I grew up in West Hartford, Connecticut, and it was, I think, maybe ahead of the curve in terms of soccer. So I got introduced to soccer pretty early in junior high school, and then on to I didn't do any league play, that I don't think they had it then, but then I went on to high school, where I played at Conard High School. There's 2 high schools in West Hartford, and I played at Conard High School for 4 years. I followed my older brother, who was also a soccer player. I did well there. I was the captain of the soccer team in my senior year. I have a younger brother who's only a year younger than I am. He's a soccer player, or he was. All of us are wases. And both my older brother, myself, and my younger brother were the captains of the Conard High School soccer team. In fact, the athletic director, the soccer coach at the time said, and he moved on to a new job when my brother Frank left, and he said, "When I run out of Thompsons, I quit." So he went on to bigger and better things. So from there, of course, I went to Bates, and when I came to Bates, it was their first year as an intercollegiate sport. Had been a club, I guess, before that.
Right. What made Bates an attractive college for you when you were looking at college?
Well, I wasn't drawn to it by the soccer. I figured I would have an opportunity to play there, but I'm sure I must have known that it was going to be an intercollegiate sport then. I don't have that memory, but I like first of all, West Hartford is a main feeder or used to be a big feeding point for Bates College. So I knew about the school. I had a close friend who ultimately went also. But it's a small coeducational school that was attractive to me, a very fine school. I liked where it was in Maine. I applied to other schools, but I was not interested in fraternities kind of thing. And I knew that Bates didn't have it, so that was a plus for me. I guess, those were the things in general that drew me to the school.
So you arrive at Bates, your first coach in soccer, James Somerville. Tell me about him.
Yeah, well, my memory is, in fact, I when you contacted me, I of course pulled out the yearbook and I found a copy of a picture. And it's a copy only, and I don't remember where it came from, but it's the picture of the soccer team in the first year I was at Bates with Coach Somerville, who I remember he had a pretty heavy brogue, and he was, I guess he was a townie guy who was a real, an avid soccer person, knew a lot about the sport, probably in his day played. I can't tell you much, I think we as a team ran, he was more of a figurehead than anything, I think, and that the team as a group with some leadership from the seniors and so forth. Pretty much, I mean, not that he didn't play a role, but I recognize him in the picture for sure. I remember he used to call me Bubby and that kind of thing, but I don't really have a whole lot more memory of his leadership.
So yeah, because I mean, soccer, as you mentioned, was a club the year before. Right. The years before it was a big deal to get soccer to become a varsity sport. But you got there the first year it was a varsity sport. Did the
Right.
upperclassmen indicate that this was a big season for the team since they were finally varsity status? Or
I have to say that I really don't recall that, being a freshman and really tied up with all that comes with that. I just I started. I played. Looking at that picture, I remember every single one of those guys and almost all of their names from the very freshman year. I noticed, right there in the middle of the back row of the picture there is Bob Lands.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, and Bob and I played together for 3 years because he was a year ahead of me, and very fine player. And of course, there's an award named after him at the school now. He was a dogged front lineman.
You were a defensive player?
I was a defender,
yeah.
I think I scored one goal in my life.
I think I saw an article about that. Yeah, the team, you guys beat Maine, right?
We beat the tar out of them. Just about everybody got one, I think. Even Thompson, yeah.
So your one goal, take me through. I'm sure you remember.
I remember of course it was a long shot, but and any defender is usually a long shot. And carried the ball for a while and put it in. That's not something guys like me in the back line normally do. So,
were you surprised it went in? Were you like, oh, that was?
Oh heck yeah! That's not supposed to happen. Didn't say much for the University of Maine at the time. I got to say that. Yeah.
When did you decide to join the tennis team?
I'm a tennis player.
Yeah.
And I played. I played tennis in. I was introduced to it. I don't know what age, but I played tennis in high school, and I was pat myself on the back here. Me and my doubles partner, we were Connecticut State doubles champions in our senior year. So when I came to Bates, I was definitely going to play tennis if I could, and I played with Stu Wallach, for whom the tennis center is named. Stu and I played doubles together. And I played as a freshman, and but I played only 2 years because had I played another year, I probably wouldn't have got out of there. I was just too busy. I was doing too many things. I sang in the Deansman, the soccer responsibilities, trying to do my studies, and I was a proctor. So I was a busy guy. And I had to make a decision.
Well, tell me what Stu Wallach was like as a doubles partner.
Well, he was a good tennis player, New Yorker, and he used to call me Frosh. Remember that? Very nice guy. As a freshman athlete who's doing pretty well, you get raised up a peg, and he would always, he would, as opposed to walking by me as many seniors do by the lowly freshmen, he would call me out. We would talk. He was a very skilled tennis player, and untimely early death. It was fun to play with him. He was a darn good tennis player. He led the team. He was number one singles.
For soccer, for you, what made defense, you play defense, what made that such a good fit for you?
To this day, I like to dribble a soccer ball and horse around with one. Not that I do it a lot, but if one of the kids is around, I will. I guess some people are just lead more towards, I'm a big guy. When I was at Bates, I was 6'4". I'm 6'2" now, but it happens. And you don't see too many 6'4" center forwards. It's just not that common. It does happen, but it's not that common. So there's an advantage for heading the ball when you're on in defense. And I played center, and I played halfback and fullback. both. I was better at it. I was better at defending. It's not that I didn't love to run with the ball and go with it. And as a defender, you do that a lot. Once you take it away or block and take it with you, you go for a while, and then you're going to feed somebody on the front line. So it was definitely where I belonged. Yeah.
So after 1 year with Coach Somerville, Roy Sigler comes in for 2 years. Tell me about him. What was he
Roy
like?
Sigler, he was one heck of a soccer player himself. He was a young man. He and I became pretty good friends, actually. Not that there wasn't a division between us, but we were pretty good friends to the extent that I was in his wedding.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. He was a talented guy, brought a lot to the team because of his background and playing skills and his history of playing. And so he provided that, coaching leadership that perhaps was lacking to some degree prior to that, and gave us a little more of a professional team spirit. And he knew what you were supposed to do. How to warm up, what are the exercises you're supposed to do. He knew about conditioning, all that kind of stuff, which is not necessarily the kind of thing, although whether Mr. Somerville might not have been on top of.
Your senior year, George Wigden comes in, and I've talked to George before, and he said, I didn't know much about soccer. I just let Rob and the boys run the team. Was that what you remember?
Yeah. Well, that's true. That, great guy. He was up front from the beginning in talking to me. I know that he gained those skills and became a pretty good soccer. But yeah, I was the assistant coach, no doubt about it, which was really a nice experience. A little more responsibility than we would normally have. But I was captain anyway, so you had it anyways. But he soaked it up like a sponge, and he's an athlete and he's a coach by nature, so he understood and learned a lot about the basics of soccer. I think in that first year, for sure, very nice experience.
What was it like for you to be basically one of the coaches that season?
Yeah, it was great. I can't say that I have any specific thought about a recommendation I made that was a real highlight and put us in. But he was constantly asking me for my opinion on things, and you get so you just offer it anyways.
Right.
When you're in that, especially in practices.
What were road trips like back then? I mean, tell me a little bit about those. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you got to be at the bus at a certain time, and off you go, and you dressed up. My recollection is you dressed up, unless it was, I was trying to think if we had any that we just went in uniform for. I don't recall. It's pretty much the way it is, was, and probably today too. And none of them were very, very. Our trips were in Maine, New Hampshire. I'm trying to think if we came to Connecticut. We played University of Bridgeport, but we played them in Maine. But they were usually down and backs. Different world today, I think, and we were roughing it. And I do recall a very vivid memory of a game in University of New Hampshire, UNH, and I remember that I was playing fullback, and I was defending, and the ball was down and right in front of our goal. I was going after the ball, and this forward booted the ball. It was down. He booted it up like this. I was leaning forward. It hit me right between the eyes. My glasses went bow. Now they split right then, knocked me out. So I didn't play the rest of that game. And what I remember is sitting in the back of the bus on the way home, just trying not to cry. It had been, I guess, just not crying because it hurt, but it was just a traumatic, I guess I had a concussion. And And I couldn't stop balling the whole time, almost all the way back to Bates.
Did Bates win that game? Do you remember? Or
I don't remember.
Yeah, right. Huh.
I only remember that
Right.
very vividly.
You played with glasses then. That's gotta be challenging in soccer, right? What did you
I didn't think anything of it
Hmm.
at the time, and that was, I'm trying to think, I think that's the only incident that I can think of where it, created a problem for me. My my vision was so bad that it was necessary. I wasn't doing contacts. You got to be a little careful when you're heading the ball and so forth. But I was a good header, and so it's just you get used to it. And I didn't even, it wasn't even a thought for me, wasn't a consideration.
At some point you joined the football team, junior year maybe. How did the process of you signing on to kick with the football team while you're also playing soccer happen?
They recruited me. I didn't go and volunteer. And I think I guess it was Bob Hatch who probably approached me. And I don't know if he approached the coach before me. I don't know. I don't recall that. But he asked, would you, I think I don't remember, trying to remember the course of events, but they did ask me if I would like to kick some first, try some field goals, try some, some kickoffs and stuff like that, which, for somebody like me, it's a sit and duck. Soccer balls move and roll. Football, at least on the kickoff, it's just sitting there. On a field goal, it's a little more of a moving target, but nonetheless, it's still ultimately put down, and if it's done well. So the arrangement was made. I was willing to give it a try, and the coach, my coach, gave permission, and so I'm trying to remember. I guess the first game must have been a home game. And I wore the full upper part of the uniform, but I didn't wear some of the pads. I didn't wear the hip pads and all that stuff. And I was trained on kickoff to kick the ball and to start backing up. And I was the safety valve. There's no doubt about it. They did say that, everybody gets through and this guy's coming at you, go get him, rather than run away from him, which would have been my first nature probably. So gratefully that never did happen. But I could kick a football pretty long ways. And we did some practices, and we practiced doing field goals. I did kick a field goal against Bowdoin at Bowdoin. Definitely remember that.
Do you remember maybe the longest field goal you ever made, or is that not something you ever kept track of?
I think that one was in the 30s, 35 maybe.
Yeah. So you never had to make a tackle, it sounds like.
I never had to make a tackle.
Okay. Did you get to know the football guys very well, or was it kind of a deal where you were just kind of showing up on Saturday sometimes?
I would practice with them a little bit at the end of soccer practice. They might still be out there, and so I'd do a little bit of that. In terms of getting to know the guys, I mean, I knew a lot. Bates is not a big school.
Right.
Back then, it was even smaller.
Yeah.
And of course, I knew, all the major players. They knew me, and I knew Tom Carr and John Euskis, all those guys. Yeah, I mean, some were more friendly with me than others, but we certainly knew each other.
Well, that leads into like maybe some particularly memorable teammates, whether it be, we touched on a few like Bob Lance in soccer, you mentioned tennis and some football guys, but who are some particularly memorable teammates when we haven't talked about yet in any of those sports?
Well, the goalie in my junior and senior year was Dave Harkness. Mm-hmm. Not only turned out to be a very fine goalie, but a good guy, and we were in the same dorm together. So not that he was a roommate, but he was a friend and a fine player. Bob Houlihan, lefty, halfback, crazy man. I think he's still an avid soccer guy up in the Boston area, an attorney. I remember way back the beginning, not in the last couple of years, but in the first year or two, the goalie at the time was a fellow by the name of Don Moini. He was his first year as a collegiate. He was a senior, but he was a goalie. He's a fine goalie. We had some good players, some really good players. I remember way back then, this is soccer, the manager of the team in the first year was a fellow by the name of Jeff Ruwalt. And Bates has always been a fantastic debating school. Back then, there were these intercollegiate debates that were big time, and Bates was huge in it, and Ruwalt was the man. He was the you'll find him in the 63 picture over on the side. Another player I played a lot with, a fellow by the name of George Beebe, very fine defender. I'm talking at a skill level of, over 50 years ago. I'm 75, so 55 years ago, 56, 57 years ago, Different ball game today, totally.
I am curious, what was soccer strategy like back then compared to what you see now in collegiate soccer, perhaps?
Well, the basic strategy back, although similar, then we had 5 forwards, and that's not always the case today. You had a center forward, 2 insides, and 2 left and right wing, and then typically you had a center halfback, left and right half, and 2 fullbacks, and left and right fullback, and the goalie. That's a classic soccer formation. In today's world, there's lots of variations on that. You have sweepers. You've got, it's hard. It's very difficult to look at it and say this is they do 3-3 types of stuff. They do a lot of different things, and so not as classic. Of course, when I started playing soccer, you didn't have the throw-in. When the ball went out of bounds, you placed it where it was, or it went out of bounds, and it was a kick-in. And that change occurred while I was at Bates.
Oh, interesting.
And I can't tell you exactly when, but it did. The throw-in.
One kind of like thrown off by that, like we get to throw the ball.
No, it's a big change.
Yeah.
And to learn how to do it, the throw-in properly and so forth, and of course, a throw-in will generally not go anywhere near as far as you can with a kick, whether you should or shouldn't. But that really changes things tremendously.
Your senior year, you were named an All-American. Do you remember when you found out about that, what it meant to you, kind of, at the time?
It still means a lot to me.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the formal notification process is. I was all New England a number of years, and I used to learn about that from the coach, and then you would receive a formal letter, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I still have the letter and so forth about the All-American status. I remember my father telling me about it, but I honestly don't remember how I first learned about it. But it was that was out of the blue for me. I mean, something I always hoped to do was to be on the first string All New England, but that was something I worked hard to, I just played my best and hoped that but the All-American thing, that was holy moly. Anyways, today I couldn't be a bat boy.
You're one of 2 All-Americans in men's soccer history at Bates. I mean, how proud does that make you?
Oh yeah. Well, it makes me very, very proud. It's something it's an achievement that I didn't seek, but I got, and it's just it always, when I think about it, it always makes me happy. I don't think about it that often, but I think about it when I go to see a Bates game or most any collegiate soccer game. I just like to watch collegiate soccer, so I'll go to watch the games around here. But I usually pick out a game or two that I try to see Bates play.
Right. Do you live in Connecticut now, or?
Yes, I live in Connecticut now.
Okay.
So when they're down this way, which they usually are, one or two games, and I'm around. I think Wesleyan and John College and Trinity. I'm right near, I'm right in the backyard of those guys. So,
what are the athletes like now compared to when you were playing? Just watching them.
Well, it's hard to say, but I watched the collegiate game today, and it seemed so fast, very, very fast, almost to my liking, too fast. I mean, if you watch professional soccer, I mean it goes slow then fast.
Right.
Collegiate soccer that I've seen in the last few years is just bam, 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 and just from my perspective, not enough slowing down, not enough basic fundamental stuff. And I was always a fundamentals guy, and to this day, I'm a believer in it, and that it's where games are won and lost, in fundamentals. And first of all, kicking the ball properly, blocking, tackling, all those things. When done properly, the ball stays close to you. When not done properly, it leaves you and you lose control. And so if I had any review of soccer as I've seen it on a collegiate level these days, it's too fast, and nobody has time to, there's very little finesse. Bam, bam, bam.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, in terms of fundamentals, after you graduated from Bates, since you were basically coaching the team your senior year, did you go into coaching at all? Did you do any coaching of soccer?
No. I didn't. When it wasn't even on my radar. When I left Bates, I actually got an offer from the Canadian Football League to try out for one of their teams. I don't even think I replied to the letter. I don't remember. It just wasn't something I was going to do.
Wait, was that football like football or football like soccer?
Football like football.
Oh, for kicking. Okay.
Canadian, yeah, for kicking.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yep. So I got on somebody's radar, I guess. But no, when I haven't, I left, when I graduated, I went into the Domestic Peace Corps, VISTA, Volunteers in Service to America. I was involved in that and related activities and Head Start and so forth for 3 years. And then I was in the Army for 3 years. And in the course of that time, got married and all that kind of stuff. Had kids, had a family, stopped. I didn't play tennis for about 40 years, really, outside of hitting the ball with my kids once in a while, but never played really. Well, but I did play in the Army. I played tennis in the Army. It wasn't my job, but I played on a tennis team in Europe. But when I retired 6-7 years ago, I returned to playing tennis, and I've been playing on average, except for this last couple months, which has been a little crazy. I play basically 3 times a week, 12 months a year, inside, outside, both. I played this morning.
Oh, excellent. So when you picked up the racket again, was there any adjustment, or was like, pick up the racket off?
There were a lot of memories, but they didn't necessarily translate into action because there were many years in between. But I took a few lessons. The basics are there. I just had a lot of rust and of course, a lot older, so I couldn't move quite like I used to. But I'm I'm fit. I exercise. I exercise a lot.
Yeah. Was it a tough decision to leave the tennis team at Bates? Because I mean, you mentioned.
It was a difficult. I mean, it was totally my decision. It was the right decision for me. But yeah, it was not an easy one. It was one of those thinking a lot about it, and getting it down to, well, why am I here?
Right.
One of those questions.
Well, speaking of that, from an academic perspective, who were some memorable professors for you?
Well, I was a sociology major, but I had close to another major in economics, because I had a scholarship, not from Bates, but from Connecticut, that required a lot of economics. I remember Mr. Ralph Chance. He was a Tagliabue. These are people who,
Yes,
he was a very well-known poet back then. Mr. Nelson, who was English, and a person who was who I became a very close friend with, and it was Carl Straub, who passed away recently, or within the last year. Carl came to Bates while I was there. So I don't know if it was in our freshman year, but our class became very friendly with Carl Straub. In fact, at our 50th reunion, he was our speaker, and we had kind of adopted him as our, so he was somebody who was important to me, a friend. I would visit with him. Another person who was very important to me when I was at Bates, though not a teacher then, but was a fellow, Peter Gomes, after whom the chapel is named. And Peter was in a class ahead of me. And so I knew I was a singer, and so Peter conducted a church choir, and was, and so I got to know him very well. A special guy.
Yeah, you mentioned your singing. Were any other student athletes at the time also singers, or are you basically the only one double dipping there, kind of?
Yeah, it takes time.
Yeah.
Steve Johansson, who was a couple of years behind me, and a fine frontline guy, good guy, actually a West Hartford kid. He became a member of the Deansmen, I think, in my junior year, as I recall. So he was. There were no football players that I can think of.
Yeah, Tom Carr wasn't a part of the Dean's.
Tom Carr was not. Yeah. Nope. I can't, that's what comes to my mind. On top of, some of my fondest memories, besides my sports memories, are my Deansman singing memories, singing all over the place.
Yeah.
Carnegie Hall and the World's Fair.
I was going to say that's more traveling than athletics.
Well, there was, I mean, there were times when we, and we were kind of on our own. We were not. It's I don't know today, but it was not that not that the college didn't recognize it, but you guys were, you had your own, created your own fees. You got your, you're on your own kind of in some regards. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Bob Lands, you mentioned you played 3 years with him. Tell me a little bit more about him as a person.
Yeah, he was a really focused guy. He was like a bull on the front line. Just, he wasn't, wasn't a real tall fellow. He wasn't just medium height, I guess, but he was, his legs, he was very heavy throughout his lower body, and and yet he had good control and good finesse, and he had fundamentals. You don't see somebody on the front line who scores a lot who doesn't. they can't do it without it. Without, if they're good, that's what they're going to do. And I think he was a business major, and I think he did well in business afterwards. I think he was with a bank. I don't know. We weren't buddy, but we were. You get on the ball field and you're a buddy out there. I mean, we didn't socialize and stuff. But.
Who are some of the teammates you socialize with, perhaps?
You know what? Outside of my being friendly with my teammates, for the most part, I didn't hang around with my teammates. They weren't, it wasn't my my junior and senior year. I roomed with a fellow by the name of Oliver Andrews, who was a English major and kind of a wonderful guy, brainy guy, but he didn't know how to spell soccer ball, and other people I roomed with were so I've always kind of been since as you say, I was in those two camps. I was in the singing camp and the sports camp. It's a whole different ball game. And so I crossed those lines, and I was very comfortable with it, and felt right at home in both areas. Had friends in all areas, but if my closer friends would have been probably more of those over in the singing side and other dorm people.
Gotcha. You touched on something before we started recording. You do remember one time where you kicked for the football team and played a soccer match on the same day. Tell me about that.
That was the day I kicked the field goal at Bowdoin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely remember that. I don't remember if we won the soccer game or not. I don't even know if we won the football game. I couldn't tell you. I'm sure I knew at the time, but just what a cool feeling.
Yeah.
Just, geez, this works. You can do it. Not just in practice. Fun.
So
I think I kicked another one at Bates, a shorter one. I did some extra points.
One of the field goals you kicked, the newspaper article said it was the first one Bates had made in like 4 years or something.
That was the Bowdoin one, probably.
Yeah.
Well, you move from a toe kick to an instep kick, and it's a whole different ballgame.
Well, I was going to say, it's totally different mechanics, right? I mean,
it's totally different mechanics.
Yeah.
Yeah. And today, all you got to do is look at all the professional football teams and their kickers. They're all soccer players.
Mm-hmm.
Or they, that's where they come from, that ilk, because nobody who's a kicker uses a toe kick.
Mm-hmm.
Not today.
Right.
You approach it from the side, not straight on. Toe kick is straight on.
Right.
No control. The ball is being hit at one point on the ball, and so it can go this way, and if you're lucky, it goes this way.
Yeah.
Whereas a soccer, kick, the ball is here. This whole part of your foot is on the ball. You have so many square inches controlling just mechanics.
Yeah, I played soccer. I never kicked field goals. So for you, it was the same though. There were no toe kicks in football at that point.
Oh well, not for me.
Not for
there were for
other teams.
Other teams. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. It was. Guys like me were starting to show up, but there was still a lot of toe kicking, even in the pros.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so that the day you kicked the field goal at Bowdoin, that was in the morning, kind of, and then you just hopped on the.
The soccer was in the morning.
Oh, the soccer was in the morning. Okay.
And the football game was at Bowdoin. So both games were at Bowdoin.
They were both at Bowdoin. Okay. Gotcha.
Both at Bowdoin. So I just had to go over to the other field, get the other uniform.
There was no 35-minute drive to try to get to somewhere. You were already
No. It was across campus somewhere.
Okay. Well, I did want to go back real quick. You mentioned you got a letter from the CFL for football. You don't remember what team or anything like that, or?
I do not.
Okay, and it wasn't even a big deal for you. You're just like, oh.
Well, I knew I wasn't going to do it.
Yeah.
And I was already committed to going out to Michigan and joining Vista. It's something I had planned on doing for a long time. And it really just, it was almost funny. It was an honor to receive such a thing that you requested, or would you like to try out? But I couldn't take it seriously. Just wasn't in my plans.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess last question for you then would be kind of, so after you graduate from Bates, you go on to, in your career and everything, how did your experience at Bates from an educational perspective, from an athletic perspective, kind of mold you in terms of preparing you for, your career going forward after that?
The academic background that you get at Bates is so broad. It's very hard to say where it's not, you don't train for, at least some do more than others, but I certainly didn't. I didn't train for a specific area. So it prepared me for working with people, because ultimately I was in business. It prepared me for leadership. Certainly my athletic, the athletics always, they of course prepared me for leadership, but they prepare you for hard work. Practice. That's how you get to Carnegie Hall, is you practice. And the same thing's true with anything endeavor that you undertake. You need to work at it. So all those things together just help form me to be who I am. I am a people person. I'm a bashful people person. So Bates is a people place. And it really is. Wonderful school. And I know that today there's more diversity in the student body than there ever has been in so many ways, and far more than it ever was with us, that the school is still essentially the basic fundamental approach to life and caring for people and doing the next right thing is ever present. It is something I learned at Bates. I take with me all the time. And I think it's still there, and it's a very strong virtue. And if I had to do it all over again, I would not. I wouldn't change a thing. Very, very happy with my experience.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Aaron, it's a pleasure talking to you.
Next time on the Bates Bobcast, we'll interview another Bobcat from days gone by. Find out who next time on the Bates Bobcast.